Good evening, everyone. State Representative Emmanuel Chris Welch here. Thank you for joining me for this very special edition of a conversation with me here on Facebook Live. Tonight, I have a very distinguished guest, the Honorable, the one and only Governor of the great state of Illinois, Governor JB Pritzker. He is a husband, he is a dad, a great dad, a lawyer, businessman, philanthropist, and now the 43rd governor of the great state of Illinois. In his rookie year, our governor did quite a job. Raised the minimum wage, passed a balanced budget. We were on pace for a surplus this year, a $45 billion rebuild Illinois capital plan, legalized cannabis, which had only been talked about, and so much more. But now in his sophomore year, he is leading the state's response to the historic global health pandemic. And in my opinion, he's doing a heck of a job. And I'm just honored to have him here tonight. Governor, how are you, sir?
I love being here. Thank you so much, Chris. It's great to spend time with you. You've been a great leader in Springfield, someone that I've relied upon, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Well, Governor, it's truly an honor. Honor's all mine. I really enjoy working with you. I can't help but recognize the background behind you. It is not your Springfield office or even your Chicago office. Looks like you're holding up at home under quarantine, I understand. How you feeling? How long is the quarantine going to last?
Well, I'm self-isolating because, as you know, we had somebody in our office who tested positive. And when you're discovered to have a colleague who has tested positive and you've been in close quarters with them, it's important to isolate. So I'm doing that. The doctors have said, I'll be able to get out of quarantine probably by the end of the week, since this person only tested positive as of, I think, Tuesday of last week. So I'll be in pretty good shape for getting to be part of the work that gets done in Springfield next week.
Well, that's good. So that means when you're out of quarantine, your daily briefings that you've been doing virtually, will you go back to doing them at the Thompson Center, or will you keep doing them virtually?
Well, I'll probably do some down in Springfield when we're there, and of course at the Thompson Center. And it may be that I've gotten used to the last 2 or 3 days anyway doing it here in my own home. So I've got a lot of choices. Personally, I prefer being out, among the state employees and of course my governor's office staff. So I'll probably get out of my house as fast as I can.
Well, it's good to hear that you're going to get out and come see us in Springfield. We haven't been there for a couple months now. Last time we were there was March 5th, and you were actually then warning us of what was lying ahead. You were really on top of this in terms of getting ahead of it. But we're returning next week for a scheduled 3 days, and you're going to be there. What are you expecting out of us next week?
Well, I mean, these are difficult times. I think, let's start with the fact that we have to address the pain, the challenges that people are going through as a result of COVID-19. So I'm hoping and I'm confident that the legislature agrees that we can get a COVID relief package through as part of the, very difficult budget discussions that we're going to need to have for people who understand our state budget. We really were on track to have a mild surplus, which is a first in quite some time. We were going to use that to pay down some of our debts in the state, but COVID-19 made all that impossible. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to pass a budget and to make sure that we deal with the challenges that families are going through. Small businesses, particularly the very smallest businesses that really didn't benefit much from the federal government's CARES Act. I think we need to address that. And then, of course, small towns. A lot of small towns didn't benefit at all. So I'd like to work on all those things. And I know the legislature has some good ideas, too. So we'll get a lot done. I think it's going to be a short period of time, at least in May, that we're able to work together. But those are the priorities. A few other things that I think we can get done. And then, we do have the rest of the year. It's a more difficult circumstance because you need to get a supermajority to get most things passed and done for the rest of the year. But I am hopeful that Republicans will be willing to work with Democrats to pass other bills after this May session.
Governor, we're returning to session next week. Lots of people are calling for you to open up the state. We're receiving a lot of emails and calls saying enough already, open up the state. Other states across the country have opened up. What is your response to that? Why aren't we opening? Why are you being so conservative?
Well, just to disabuse some people of a notion they may have, we're not behind a whole lot of states. There are states that jumped ahead and said, we're not going to follow any of the data or science, and we're just going to open everything and hope for the best. Most state governors have been responsible about this, including our Midwestern neighbors, most of them, doing the right thing. What's the right thing? It's first, let's make sure we keep people safe. That's above all else, that's our job. Make sure people are safe. Second, we want to we want to make sure that our economy reopens, but again, with a minimum amount of illness that results. And so that means that people have to continue to follow a lot of the rules that we put in place. For example, we have to wear face coverings. I'm sorry, but until we get a vaccine or a very, very effective treatment, face coverings are really going to be required. In workplaces often, and certainly when people are out in public in any location where they can't socially distance properly. So those are components of what the future will look like. But I want to get people back to work as fast as humanly possible, again, while keeping them safe. So we put together a plan that we put forward called Restore Illinois, and it's got 5 phases. But we've already gone through 2 of them. We're in the second phase now, but in about 16 days, much of the state will be able to move into the third phase. And in that third phase, we'll be able to open barbershops and salons, retail stores will open. There'll be quite a lot more that people can do. And most of all, people will be able to get back to work, a lot of folks anyway.
Governor,
so we're making progress.
I've heard from a lot of my colleagues, I've seen in the news, a lot of folks talking about the Restore Illinois plan. I've read it several different times. And some of my colleagues from downstate Illinois have complained very vocally about the Restore Illinois plan. And folks are really concerned about the regions and how certain counties were lumped into the same region as Chicago and Cook County, particularly those in Grundy County and Kane County, DuPage County. Our friend Jack Franks is questioning why McHenry County is in the same region as Chicago. Those are fair questions, Governor. Why are those counties that are relatively far away from Chicago, why are they in the same region?
So we grouped together areas of the state based not upon, how people feel about where they live, or even if in one particular location, a city or a county, there were more cases or less cases. What we grouped them together to focus on is hospital availability, medical care availability for people. So here's the thing, the virus is still out there. And even if we wear masks and face coverings, even if we wash our hands regularly, there's still a risk to people out there that if they don't socially distance, if they don't follow the rules, we're going to end up with many more people getting sick. And when that happens, you need to make sure there are hospital beds available for them. And if we don't do that, then you can imagine people will die in the streets because they won't be able to get a hospital bed when they need one. So that's a lot of the reason that we grouped these areas together, because we wanted to make sure that there was hospital availability. We also are looking to make sure that all of the areas of the state have the ability to open based upon their capability. And again, if you take hospitals into account, You could see where central Illinois, which has really quite a number of hospitals for a relatively fewer people, has a tremendous opportunity to reopen, where some other areas of the state maybe not, because they don't have those hospital beds. So that's really why we divided the state the way that we did into 4 regions. One last thing, you could choose really lots of different ways to divide the state up. There are 11 emergency medical service divisions of the state that the Department of Public Health recognizes. There are 102 counties. There are 1,200, almost 1,300 local governments. Those are all different ways we could have divided the state up. And I'm sure that if we had chosen one of those other ways to do it, someone would be complaining that they got lumped in with somebody else, or that this city doesn't want to do what that city's doing in some county that's lumping them together. So that's a complaint that I know people feel to their core. But I will also remind people that we're about 16 days away from people being able to move into the next phase. And the reason that we're waiting that period is we're waiting and watching. Are the numbers going to keep going down in a good way? Are we going to have fewer people getting sick, fewer people going in the hospital? That's a very important trend that we want to see. Right now, it's very flat. And it's okay if it's flat. What we don't want to see is a surge.
We're 16 days away from most of the state being able to move to phase 3 likely. And then we wake up this morning and you see businessman Willie Wilson calling for 100 pastors to resume church service on Sunday morning. I know how I felt the minute I read it, because I tweeted about it instantly. I was just so irate about it, particularly with the impact on the Black community. What was your reaction when you heard that, Governor?
I think it shows a lack of caring for the very people that I think we all should care most about, our senior citizens and our African American community, where both are groups of people who are vulnerable to this virus. And when you put those together, when you have seniors who are African American, you're going to see illness that leads to hospitalization more likely than in other groups. And so when Willie Wilson says, hey, to the pastors, just open up and let everybody come, people want to do what their pastor says. And, we all, I think, we're people of faith, all of us, and the people who regularly go to church, of course, most of all. And it's very dangerous to call for this. So I was angry as well. And I think that, again, if you care about this community, if you care about our seniors and care about our churches too, the pastors really should reject this notion and instead say to their parishioners, I want you and God wants you safe. So please stay home. Follow the epidemiologists and scientists' recommendations, the governor's orders, and we'll open it gradually and people will be able to worship together soon, but we just need to make sure that we're doing our best to defeat this virus.
I absolutely agree, Governor. I'm talking to Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. If you haven't had a chance to chat with our governor, just stay tuned here. You're going to get a lot of good nuggets from him. He's full of information. Please share this with your friends. If we're not friends, share it with your friends so they can pick up on this great information that we're getting out of our governor. We're talking about the call from Willie Wilson for 100 pastors to resume church service. And let me just say, I agree with the governor completely. And to me, it's all about following the advice of health experts. And that's what I really want to impress upon folks is you're getting your advice from health experts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Let me ask you this question, Governor. Similar to the churches, who are, many of them are frustrated and want to open. You do have a lot of frustrated small business owners. The Restaurant Association has been very vocal recently, particularly about your phase plan. They want to open up in phase 3. What's wrong with some of these small businesses like restaurants and smaller businesses opening up in phase 3?
Well, nearly every small business will have an opportunity to open up in phase three. Retail stores, manufacturing, lots of different businesses. The one area that epidemiologists are telling us is more difficult is restaurants, food preparation, bars. And I think their reasoning is, and again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I do listen to them. Their reasoning seems to be that it's very hard first to socially distance when you have a waiter who is delivering, an open plate of food in front of you. You're not going to wear a face mask when you're eating. And the delivery of that, it's important for both parties to wear masks. You wearing a mask alone is not nearly as effective at keeping you both safe as both of you wearing a mask. In fact, your mask that you wear, face covering, keeps the other people around you safe, and their face coverings keep you safe. And so it really has to be that both parties are wearing that covering to keep everybody safe. And then add this idea of like open prepared food, where somebody's not going to be wearing a mask. And then there are the number of people that ultimately touch that plate that's being prepared and delivered to the table. Look, again, I would like to open restaurants. I mean, anybody who knows me knows that I like to socialize. I like to spend time with people. Going out to a restaurant is a fun thing to do. I have to admit, I occasionally like to eat. And so I really do want restaurants and bars to open up as fast as possible. But I also want to follow what the scientists and epidemiologists are telling me. And what they're saying is that we need to watch how it works with retail first and with barbers and salons. And then, as we gradually move forward, if we can keep our rates of infection down, then maybe we can manage to do, let's say, open air restaurants and bars later in the summer or maybe in the midsummer as we move into phase 4. And so I'm excited for that opportunity, but let's not do it too fast, because they're telling me, and if you listen to Dr. Fauci the other day, if you open too fast, we're going to end up with a lot of sickness and people dying.
Well, I think what we're hearing is people's frustration. And part of that frustration is, they're just not seeing any income come in right now. They're just seeing money go out the door. And many of these small businesses applied for the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Loan, and were shut out to only hear that these publicly held corporations received money. Folks are hot right now, Governor. And so if we're going to keep them closed, what do we say to that small business, that restaurant that wants to survive when we come out of this thing? What can we do for them?
Well, we've got to do several things. Most importantly, we've got to support those small business people to make sure that when we do move into phase 4, that they're still around to be able to reopen. And that means more support for those restaurants and bars. So I've talked to Senator Durbin and to our federal officials about the idea of doing something in the upcoming CARES Act that's specific to restaurants and bars, which again are going to be a little later in opening than retail, let's say. So that's one thing. The second thing is you and I are going to work together, Leader Welch, to get something done in Springfield that will help these small businesses that got left out of that PPP program. That was a good program, or at least the intentions were good, but much of that money went to large corporations. And you and I both know that the economy thrives on small businesses and entrepreneurs who are willing to take a risk to go start a business and grow it. And so many people are hurting right now that have been doing exactly what we want them to do, to take that risk. Let's go support them by passing a COVID relief package in Springfield and making sure that we get the federal government to do the right thing too.
Well, I'll tell you, since I have you here, I think what we need in any small business package, and I'll certainly put it on the table next week in Springfield, is a technical assistance program. Many of these small businesses, while the big banks weren't letting them through their systems or returning their calls, they legitimately had issues applying and preparing the application. I do think we need to build capacity uh, with a lot of our Black and brown businesses in particular. And I think the state has a role in that. So I'd love to see your office in DCO take the lead in a technical assistance program that's going to help these businesses so that when these opportunities open up, we don't hear excuses. We hear nothing but compliments because of success stories.
Well, let's go do that.
Uh, let me ask you about our local governments, particularly park districts. Park districts are disappointed. Again, it kind of goes back to your Restore Illinois plan. Summer's coming up in 6 weeks. Normally that's swimming pool season, splash pad season, and many of them are going to be closed for the summer. What do you say to the park districts and the parents with kids that are already out of school? And what do you say to them? They're disappointed that their pools are closed and the splash pads.
Well, COVID-19 has had just a terrible impact on, I think, everybody's outlook. And especially as we think about summer fun and enjoying time with our children and our kids having fun with each other out there at the parks. And there is going to be this is going to be an unusual summer for everybody. And all I can say is that we will get through this. There are going to be opportunities. State parks are open, but yeah, it's going to be difficult. Some of the programs that I think all of us have put our kids in, summer football or baseball or soccer, summer camp, day camps and overnight camps. I think those are going to be very challenging in this environment when none of us wants our kids to get sick. And now, as you know, there is a strain of this that's going around that is affecting children. And so we've got to keep an eye on that and protect our kids from getting it. So look, all I can say is
visualize a splash pad. What could be the harm of letting kids run through water?
I'm with you. I'm not the one making that decision. I will tell you that I hope that's going to be up to local governments, I might add. That's not something that I'm deciding. Local governments are going to decide how open their programs are going to be. What I'm listening to are what Dr. Ezike and other of our public health officials are telling me about how many people can you get together at a given time, and how do you maintain social distancing in accomplishing that goal. So all I can say is if we can meet all those requirements, and we are working with the public health officials to try to do that everywhere. But that a summer camp or an environment in which there often are 40 or 50 kids who get together, in a relatively confined space, that's going to be hard to do at least early in the summer until we move into phase 4.
Yesterday, you announced $25 million in fast track grants that open to all local governments, park districts, local municipalities.
It is, and we hope that people will apply for it. There's a lot of infrastructure dollars in there. We want to keep people working. This is a way to invest in those infrastructure projects that maybe were going to be put off this summer because of all the challenges the local governments are having with their own finances. So we're trying to prime the pump, so to speak, with 25 million early in the summer, really over the next month, and then 25 more $million following that.
Oh, wow. And who knows, depending on what happens in DC, if we get money out of another stimulus for local governments, maybe another 25 million.
I just was reading a report that the House of Representatives is looking at a total package of relief for all across the board of $3 trillion. A trillion of that, I can't even believe I'm using the T word, trillion, but $1 trillion of that focused on state and local government. So
that's the HEROES Act that was recently filed. I think it was just yesterday, correct?
It hasn't been passed yet, I don't think. But
yeah, I think it was just filed yesterday.
Oh, just filed, right? Exactly, it was filed, but it's been in the works for some time because I've been in discussions with the leaders in in Washington about it for got to be 2 or 3 weeks now.
Governor, let me ask you about unemployment. If there's anything that's burning my phones up right now, my phones, my colleagues' phones, our emails, it's unemployment. people saying their calls are not getting answered. They can't get through on the website. We have some real frustrated people. Can you tell us what's going on at IDS with the unemployment system?
Well, just as a backdrop, so people understand, the systems that were built to handle unemployment were never built to handle what we're going through, which is the biggest drop in employment and rise in unemployment in a short period of time that's ever happened in the history of the United States. And so these systems, which were built in the aftermath of the Great Recession just 10 years ago, everybody thought, well, it could never get worse than that. So let's build a system that could handle the Great Recession, because they couldn't handle it back then, the systems they had. So they built that system. Very little money was invested in it, for the last 10 years before I became governor. And nobody could imagine, that we would be in this situation where, 1 million people have filed for unemployment in the state of Illinois already. So, so we had to rebuild those systems. And, there's an old expression about having to build the airplane while you're flying it.
That's what you're doing.
Really what we had to do at IDES. Now, let me be clear, though, that doesn't answer the questions that people have. That just explains, why the systems weren't really prepared. So we brought in a lot of help to make sure that we could take the system to where it needs to be. But here's what we've been able to do. We've been able to take almost 20 times the number of applications online per day that were taken at this time last year. So the system is much more robust online. And I have said over and over again, if you can file online, which vast majority of people are able to do that successfully. If you can file online, I recommend that you go do that. If you are having trouble online with something that involves just a technical problem, then obviously you need to get help. We've created online chat functions and an ability for you to connect with people online. And that, again, is much better than using a phone line. Because remember, the people who answer the phones, and there's no way this system in any state was prepared for what's happened. We had a certain number of people answering phones and only a certain number of phone lines to handle it, because nobody's ever seen anything like this. The minute that it became, overwhelming, we had to go figure out, well, we've got to make the phone system much bigger, but also we've got to find people to answer the phones. And here's the problem. The federal government has very strict guidelines on who can answer the phone. They have to be trained for months because they're dealing with private information. So bringing new people on is very difficult. So we had to go find retired people that were working before at IDES, bring them back, and then take people that were working already at IDES and other functions and have them answer phones. And still, it's not enough. So the phone lines problem, which is still being worked on and still growing, is going to be a challenge for the remainder of people filing for unemployment. So again, we'll do our best to try to answer all the calls, but it is much better if you try to go online. One last thing. There's a new PUA filing. This is for people who are independent contractors, 1099s, sometimes called gig workers, where you can file for unemployment. You couldn't do that before, but they passed a special law just in the last month to allow independent contractors to get unemployment. And so we want to make sure you get that. So we built an entirely new system for that, which is up and running. And it took, in the first day, it had something like 68,000 connections with people and 50,000 applications on the first day. So I hope that people will take advantage of that. If you're eligible as an independent contractor, please, go to the system, file. I think you're going to have a relatively easy time getting what you need.
Governor, I see I only have about 30 seconds left, but I got two questions, if you can bear with me, just two questions left. I want to ask you, Dr. Ayala talked with me last week, and she said that schools really need to plan for an A, B, and C. We don't know if schools are going to open up in August. What's your thoughts? Will in-person learning resume in August?
Well, I don't want to guess at it, but I'm determined that we should make sure that schools uh, can open and do open. But again, I'm not going to overrule the science. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not going to be able to determine whether the virus is going to be dangerous in schools in the fall. It's just impossible for me to know right now, or anybody. What I can tell you is that we're getting ready for both options, and we're including schools in discussions about, if you had to go virtual, could you do it and how would you do it? We've provided grants to schools to make sure that they have the connectivity and the programming and the software to be able to do it. And we're trying to spin all that up this summer. And I hope we're ready if it's necessary in the fall. Meanwhile, what I want most of all is for people to get back to school and get back to work, and make sure that we get, some semblance of normalcy back by the fall.
Governor, and lastly, and I thank you for your time here tonight, but lastly, with school coming to an abrupt end, communities all across the state, including here in Proviso Township, we're trying to let graduates know that we appreciate them. We have been sending out messages all week via social media networks, letting graduates at Proviso Township High School District 209 and other districts know that we appreciate them. Any parting words or message you'd like to give our graduates here in Proviso and across the state?
Well, that's so nice. And listen, let me start by saying that I know this is intended to be very different for these graduates than it has turned out. And so I know this is very difficult for many who had expected to be going to proms and graduation parties, and to have a graduation that your parents get to, come to, your grandparents, and watch you. But here's what I can tell you. With all the difficulty that you're going through, I want you to know that I think you're going to look back on this, having lived through it and having dealt with the anxiety and the challenge that exists of graduating in this environment, and you'll be telling your kids and your grandchildren about how unusual your graduation was compared to theirs. And I think it'll end up being a story that'll live with you and it'll help shape you in a very positive way, because it's often the challenges in life that shape us. So let me also say to the Proviso Township High School graduates, all of the high schools, look, congratulations. I mean, you've done an amazing thing. 4 years, you got almost to the very end, and this thing came up and nipped graduation in the bud. But you should take a moment to celebrate what you've achieved and what you and your friends have had for 4 years. And just remember this as something that will shape you, and your achievements will last a lifetime here. So I just want to say congratulations. You've done something very special, and I want all of you to go on to have successful careers, both going on to college and in your careers in life. And I'm excited for you. I want you all to stay in Illinois and work here in Illinois, because this industry, this economy in the state of Illinois is going to come back, and it's coming roaring back. And you're going to be the lifeblood that makes that happen.
Well, Governor, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you join me for a conversation here tonight. You are doing a fabulous job. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. You signed up for the job and you're doing it. And so I just want to let you know, keep doing it, doing what you're doing. There's a whole lot of people in this state that's praying for you every night. And thank you again, sir. And you stay safe, stay home, because you're saving a whole lot of lives.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your leadership too.
Thank you. See you in Springfield.
Thank you.